town that the trail passes through to have a say in that design? Because, I mean, it's not like you're gonna just not have a trail going through Cumberland. It's gotta go through Cumberland. So what is the 12K doing in this case? Like one, does DOT really require a financial contribution to participate as a town where the trail is going through? As in, if we do not contribute to this, does that really mean we wouldn't have any input?
So it doesn't mean you wouldn't have any input. We probably would not continue with design in the community if the town wasn't ready for participation. And the local match really is about more than the money, right? It's, our local cost sharing policy updated in 2024 now requires 10%. 10% is not necessarily the deal breaker for us. It's not always about the money. It's more about building local support for these types of projects in communities and also helping us to build that base of support, because we're going to have to go probably for a larger federal grant in order to seek construction funding, and that will likely have its own local match involved. So that's kind of to help show local support and build that momentum locally so that we know we have a strong partnership to pursue something big. And then moving on from there, I'll just be quick, moving on from there, Maine DOT does not maintain trail facilities. We don't maintain any trail facilities in the state, so we'll be looking for local partnerships to do maintenance and that kind of thing ongoing. I know there's an interlocal agreement, kind of separate conversation about what that might look like separate from this, but.
Hang on, Bob.
Hang
on, Bob. I'm not done.
ask a
I'm not
question.
done, and that segues into my next point. I know we're looking at this in isolation, but I don't think it can be looked at that way in complete isolation, because just a little bit of the history on this topic. 2 years ago, I think it was my first council meeting, actually, we had a meeting about this. It was very long. There were a lot of concerns brought up. There was concerns from the council about not having enough information, Cumberland not having access, but also requiring, maintenance of it, like having to take care of the maintenance. How would that work? Concerns from abutters, lots of different questions unanswered because there wasn't an MDOT representative there at the time. And so my thought was, okay, we have you here tonight. We should be able to answer all these questions, and questions beyond just this monetary commitment just for the design plans, but the thing that it's leading to down the line, because in order to make a decision on this tonight, I need more information about where we're going, like what's the big picture. And so we left that meeting 2 years ago with the understanding that before we went forward with any more, either a monetary thing or a resolution, there would be a meeting set up with MDOT and the abutters, and there would be some sort of collaboration happening, like getting through the issues, getting more answers. And for me, this meeting came up all of a sudden, and it's been the 2-year gap with nothing happening in between, at least for me. It could have been, behind the scenes or something could have happened. And if there's information gaps, please, somebody fill me in with those. But so if we can't answer the questions we have tonight about, are we going to have access? What are the maintenance requirements, like how does this play out, the town's responsibility, how many years is this going on for? For me, it's like, I don't know if it's simply, sure, buy in for $12,000 to show that you have a base of support, but we still have these unanswered questions. Mm-hmm. So and I know you said that's separate from now, but are you able to answer any questions about next steps?
Yes, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer some questions, and also happy to, if that leads to subsequent meeting or a work group or some other meeting, like you suggested with the butters or others, to work some of those out.
Okay.
Myself or maybe a couple other colleagues could assist with that.
Okay. I'll let you go now, Bob, because we'll save questions for
I was
later,
going to
guess.
suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we allow one question per counselor when we go down and return, and that way, if somebody else had an overlapping question, we wouldn't feel like we didn't have a participant. So
Go ahead, Bob.
I'll wait.
What?
Sure. All right. So I was a little confused. So I'm a little confused. I didn't realize that the interlocal agreement is not through through MDOT, and I understand that that's not what we're discussing tonight. But how is it, can you just walk me through, I mean, DOT owns this property, right? You are building this trail, but then you're not maintaining it?
Correct.
Could
I
you walk
can
me
elaborate.
through that
Yes.
a little
Yes,
bit?
of course.
Like,
Thank So Maine DOT has access to federal funds that can implement these types of projects and access to the technical resources, engineers, and such to do this kind of work. But we don't maintain recreational trails. We haven't, at least to my knowledge, in the state of Maine, and have always leaned upon partnerships with municipalities, stakeholders, nonprofits, or interlocal groups of multiple municipalities to do that kind of ongoing general, mow the grass, programming, that type of thing, day-to-day operational maintenance. There's a couple other examples of how we do that in other trails in the state, and as far as I know, the department itself is not at this time interested in taking on maintenance of these types of facilities. And very similar to our sidewalks, right? We have very similar funding programs to fund sidewalks with municipalities, and then turn those over to the municipalities to maintain.
Thank you.
Andrew?
If I'm only allowed one question
No, you can.
right now, but sort of following up on that, do you have any ideas on what the cost would be? A comparison, a similar trail, if it was implemented, it's X amount a year for the local municipality to maintain and all?
Yes, yep,
'Cause that
yeah.
would really help us, because we're not signing up for $12,000. We're potentially signing up for $12,000 plus X amount a year forever.
Yes, yep, yeah, understandable. So trail maintenance can vary a little bit, certainly in the first handful of years, 5 years or so, when something is brand new. The brunt of the maintenance in that period is mostly vegetation management, mowing, trimming trees, that type of thing. So it's a little bit lower ask, and then if something comes up that's unpredicted, so some kind of damage or vandalism or something to that effect, or storm damage, something like that would be something you might think of happening in the first 5 years or so. Beyond that, you start to maybe think about some pavement repair or some other more infrastructure repair. So you can see the cost may go up a little bit over time, and maybe there's some financial planning that goes with that. But talking some round numbers here, probably $2,000 a mile, $2,500 a mile, give or take, in that area is what would be a pretty well-maintained trail. I was actually up with the Freiburg Select Board last week, and they spend under $2,000 a mile on the section that they have in Freiburg, and it's looking great so far. But it kind of can depend on how maintenance is done as well. So Maine DOT won't dictate how or who does maintenance necessarily. It could be done with town staff. There could be a lot of volunteer effort involved in things. It could be done with contract work, multiple ways to go about it, and that could probably impact the cost.
Bill, any questions?
Following the one-question rule here, the 12K commitment just commits us to this initial engineering study. It doesn't commit us to anything else beyond that engineering study. Is that correct?
Correct, yep. So if the town chose to participate in that engineering study, and we do that preliminary engineering, so that level of engineering would not be quite enough to go to bid that for construction. We would probably stop at a common milestone in our design process that we call a preliminary design report. That's a great place to stop a project and hold and look for big dollars, look for federal grants, and look for larger construction funding before we proceed with some other processes to finish out design and then work into construction. But this $12,000 would be just for that preliminary engineering. You would not be committing the town to anything beyond that. And like I said, it's just a kind of a resolution on the table, I think, today. Our actual project manager would reach out to the towns or to GPCOG, if that's how the funding is going to flow together, and have an actual funding agreement, a project agreement later on. But we would want to know that the municipalities are on board and able to commit if interested.
Dakota, one quick question for you. We have the largest stretch in this project. 3 miles of going by people's backyards. Can you tell me or tell everybody here what you've done as far as butters, what you've done to reach out to them, to assure them their privacy is not going to be invaded, they're not going to end up with people in their backyards? Can you
Yep.
Talk to us about the outreach to the abutters.
Yep. So I can tell you at this point, Maine DOT itself has done no outreach to abutters. Like I said, PACS sponsored this and put this forth in our work plan. So before that, it was just an idea through the Rail Use Advisory Council process and the subsequent legislature that approved it. There was not a lot of project planning going on. Kind of on behalf of the department or others to bring that to fruition beyond just the authorization done by the legislature. Now that we have a funded project, we're starting to get into that time when that's really important, right? So into design and moving forward here, we'll be working with stakeholders and abutters and the municipality itself and others to work on what the trail looks like and what we need to talk about to make sure folks are comfortable.
Tig, go ahead.
I'm not going down the line, but after the 2024 meeting, Matt and I went to Augusta to meet with the then commissioner, who is now retired, the deputy commissioner, who is now the commissioner, to kind of talk about this project as well as a lot of the abutter concerns. We were sort of reassured that there would be those dialogues with the abutters, so it is disappointing to hear that those haven't transpired, particularly when we are now being asked to commit funds. I understand it's $12,000. I understand in terms of the world of project management that you probably need to do the foundational engineering to know what you're working with and what's viable. But you can also imagine that for us being up here, we are here to bring forth the concerns that have been flagged to us by the abutters. And we also conscious that we have a lot of supporters of this project in town as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm personally just a little frustrated that there hasn't been proactive outreach prior to this, even if it had just been kind of a sit down with folks to say, hey, this is coming, here are the different steps, because you're sort of putting us in an impossible position right now. You're saying, hey, we want you to build this, we want some money, and yet you haven't kind of held up your end of the bargain. And I just wanted to put that out there because it doesn't feel great.
I appreciate your honesty and understand that. I will just say Maine DOT did not fund this project of our own choice. This was sponsored by PACS, of which the town of Cumberland is a member of. So certainly in the future, we can have some of those conversations a little bit sooner, probably with the MPO, with PACS, and get some of those earlier pain points kind of discussed out in the open before we fund a project. But certainly understand.
Jeff?
So, paving, you mentioned maintenance costs being relatively low at first, $2,000 a mile, which sounds great. But, I know when we go to look at paving, 3 miles, could probably pave a couple streets for that. You folks put down more pavement a year than anyone else in the state, obviously. Any idea on what maintenance paving would be on this, based on what you're building?
Yeah, yep. So I would expect at least a full 20 years, maybe 30 years of pavement life on a trail like this. There's some example trails. The Kennebec River Rail Trail would be one that I could think of that's been paved now for over 20 years, and they're starting to talk about, repaving or some surface rehab there. So 20 to 30 years would be a good useful life. Anything short of 20 years, I think, would be a little bit short for life of pavement for a trail like this. And I will say I can't speak to funding programs in the future necessarily and what's available and what's eligible. But if a facility like this does reach the end of its usable life, it needs to be reconstructed. Currently, Maine DOT does have some programs that municipalities can apply for cost sharing of projects like that. So not day-to-day maintenance and that kind of thing, but if an asset utilizes its full expected life and is ready to be reconstructed or majorly rehabilitated, we may have some programs in the future if those programs could continue to exist.
And while we're talking about maintenance of this trail, obviously Freiburg gets more snow a year than we do. So, I know their trail's kind of snowed over in the winter. What's the expectation for, Greater Portland? I mean, is this a 4-season maintained trail? Is it till the first snowstorm, until it first melts? What's what's the thought process behind that with this?
Yep, I think Maine DOT would elect to have, let the folks who are managing the trail make that decision. I don't think we would necessarily dictate that in this case. Probably something to work with all of the neighboring municipalities on, whether it's something that folks want to clear for year-round use or want to allow snow for, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, that type of thing. I'm aware of some trails that even just clear about half the width so that there's a little room to utilize the snow and a little room to not utilize the snow if that's what we choose. So there's some options I don't think Maine DOT would necessarily require either.
Denise?
You said PACS, I had to Google it. Are you referring to like the GPCOG Portland Area Comprehensive Transportation System?
Correct.
Is that what that
yes.
is?
Yep.
Okay. Which is a planning organization for Greater Portland, for anyone who doesn't know, because I didn't. And it includes 17 communities. We're included there. So I have a question about how the contribution was determined, because it's split equally among municipalities, but also the Trail Alliance, you said, has an equal share of that. Was PACT the organization that determined what that split was? How was that decided?
Yeah, so Maine DOT's local cost sharing policy requires 10% of the total project cost to be from non-Maine DOT, non-federal sources. So that's $60,000. And I believe the candidate, there actually is a sheet, a 1 or 2 page document that PAC submitted to our work plan process. That might be something we can share if that's not something that town manager has. But so that, I believe, just said 10% split between the municipalities. I think since that was submitted to Maine DOT, the Casco Bay Trail Alliance has come forth with the intent to help cover a share of that. So that was what would reduce it from 15,000 times 4 to be 60,000 down to 12,000 with that extra participant, the nonprofit.
I see. Because that made me think you had mentioned that MDOT doesn't really care who does the maintenance on the potential trail. It could be the municipalities, it could be volunteers. I'm curious how much work has been done on this so far, since the funding kind of seems loose-ish to fundraise. Like, have there been any fundraising efforts? Because I know that it does benefit communities in ways. However, there's a big push by, Trail Alliance, bicyclists, like there are groups of people that really, really want this. So I'm curious if there are any like fundraising plans in place to take the pressure off of municipalities and, the people who are actually going to be using it mostly.
Yeah, great question, and I think that opens up some possibilities for discussion of how trails are actually managed. But I can't speak necessarily to what the Casco Bay Trail Alliance has done. They're a private nonprofit, and they probably are doing some activities now, and maybe have a larger role or a different role that could be played with trail on the ground that is actually used and programmed and promoted. So that's something that folks from Casco Bay Trail Alliance could speak to better. There are some example nonprofits who do have trail on the ground that are, they're operating, they're programming. There's 5Ks, there's events, there's things like that. So certainly there is a role for organizations like that in fundraising if they so choose. And then there is that interlocal entity discussion that Maine DOT is not a part of, but would be shared between the municipalities that sign on. And there probably are some options through that entity as well.
Okay, so it's good for me to know what the rules are. So if, fundraising is good, this is good, like everyone can pitch in, like that opens things up for me a bit. And it's not as rigid as I thought it was, where it's like, this is an MDOT project, it is happening, it doesn't matter, whatever anyone else has preferences on or what happens, this is happening, and, that's it. But it sounds like it's a little bit more looser than my assumption.
Yep,
So,
yep.
Appreciate that.
Bob?
Pass for now.
Andrew?
Sort of bit going off of Jeff's comment about the paving. Has it been determined that it will be a paved trail versus like a crushed stone? Like parts of the Eastern Trail are paved, but parts are not. Like, has that been determined?
Yes, I believe the Rail Use Advisory Council recommended a paved surface on the trail, and the bill that authorized the interim trail use either mentions the surface specifically or maybe just mirrors or recommends what the RUAC, the Rail Use Advisory Council, recommended, which was pavement. that is something that, as far as I'm aware of at this point, Maine DOT intends to implement what the bill that authorizes us to do this says. But if it was of interest for, some of these municipalities or municipalities together to talk about that a little bit more, we may be open to it. Like you said, the Eastern Trail, and there are other examples of crushed stone surfaces and other trails. Given the contextual environment here, we're probably going to, experience a lot more regular bicyclists and folks walking, strollers, rollerblades, that type of thing. So a paved surface might be what is contextually, expected here, but could have that conversation if needed.
All right. So if we signed on and the 12K got us, a seat at the table, and having MDOT go through and have the trail go through Cumberland, what does that look for us? Like, what is that seat at the table? Is that just we get to show up to meetings and, sit in the audience and say something? Are we, have a member on whatever board, commission, group, or like, how does that work?
Yep, that's a great question. I think there's some room to define that. Maine DOT intends to administer the project, meaning that we'll hire the consultant firm doing the work, but certainly can take guidance from like a steering committee if the municipalities would, together wanted to create a steering committee that we could meet with, or our project manager would meet with the consultant some number of times to talk about the design, as well as ahead of the public engagement part of our design process. I think there's some freedom and flexibility there to see what works. We've done some different things with different types of projects regarding that, and whether it's staff involvement from the municipality or some other kind of project-specific committee made up of representatives of stakeholders or people from the towns.
So it's up in the air right now.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
But there is public engagement in all of our infrastructure design processes, and we would be, running these designs by the town at the very least. But we certainly can have a committee that meets with our project manager or whatever works best. Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the big concerns that people brought up also is just access of, is Cumberland going to have any access? If so, where? If not, why not? And it's making sure that we have some sort of ability to affect that.
Yeah. I think that's a super important question. So right now, the access probably at Johnson Road and access probably at the Park and Ride in Yarmouth, and what's in the middle there is Cumberland. Unfortunately, I don't know of a public access point in there that we know for sure works. I have had a discussion with the project manager of the Tuttle Road Bridge project that is ongoing now. He's clued me in onto what some of the side slopes around that bridge are going to look like. There may, I can't guarantee there will be, room to make it work, but there may be room to make something work where we could have the trail come up as a spur from the rail corridor up and connect into the roadway network there. That bridge was designed years before we had the authorization to do this trail, so we're kind of working between two timelines with that. But I've had a conversation with them, and it's something that our project manager for this design would look at. Beyond that, if there is ever any other option as far as publicly accessible land or property, or if some time down the line the town were to buy a parcel and develop a park that connected to the corridor, or some other land trust or other publicly accessible places, certainly could provide access like that.
Bill?
So we know also too that CMP is looking at upgrades for the Portland area. Have you guys been in discussions with them at all?
Yes, I have not myself, but I'm aware of some very important upgrades happening in the rail corridor in regards to CMP and some of the developments further south and the corridor that CMP is working to connect. So we're definitely in conversations with them. I can take some questions and take them back to the folks who might know the answers, but I haven't been directly involved in that.
So just it would be a kind of a combined, or at least a collaborative design process between CMP and the state. So you guys would have ongoing meetings to kind of discuss your different goals and where you were headed.
Yes, yep.
And just in general, as someone who lives in the project development world, I think that this is just kind of a normal part of the process, right? What we're seeing here. So for what it's worth, sometimes it's hard on these projects to reach out until you have a little bit more detail. And sometimes you go through this process and the project doesn't move forward. But unless, I think, so let's see how we can help shape the process, I think, is where it was. What I'd like to see. I like the idea of the steering committee so that we can at least have a say in this process.
So I'm gonna open it back up to the public for technical questions of Dakota. Everybody's gonna get a chance. You wanna come up and speak, give your opinion on the project, that will be afterwards. But if anybody has a technical aspect question of the project, please step up to the microphone, let us know who you are. Ask Dakota the question, and then Dakota will come back up and answer it.
Wayne Curtis Mill Road, just a thought off the top of my head. We will be responsible for all emergencies on that trail. Is that correct? In other words, people falling down on bikes, people breaking into houses. I know next to me, because the Cumberland Police Department has stopped by my house to find out if I knew about a robbery that occurred. So I know they're occurring there. He also told me about occurrences in Falmouth where people have broken into houses coming off the tracks. But the big thing was fire department, emergency vehicles, how do they access?
So Wayne, your question for them, are we responsible for the public safety?
Correct.
And Dakota, your answer?
Thank you for the question. Maine DOT does not provide emergency services, so it would be the agencies who regularly provide those law enforcement or medical or fire services for the area.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Moriarty. Greetings, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your election. I'm Steve Moriarty from 48 Drown Road here in Cumberland, a town resident for 43 years. I have two questions, really rapid fire for Dakota, if I could. Dakota, first of all, I'm not familiar with the bill. Does the bill provide any time period by which the preliminary work must be completed or the state funding is withdrawn?
So the bill in the state legislature, the statute that was enacted to allow Maine DOT to pursue design and implementation of an interim trail does not have a timeline associated with it. That is something that Maine DOT is authorized to do, and now we're subject to, timelines and available resources and funding to do that implementation. Right now, the funding source that we do have does have a timeline. I believe if we get those funds obligated into a contract, we have a handful of years before those need to be fully expended.
So my quick second question is, I understand this is a complex project. The big question is, how do you get off the dime without committing yourself to anything that is beyond measuring at this point? I take it, Dakota, that you can't do anything further at all without preliminary engineering work. And as a sort of a subpart of that, assuming that that preliminary stuff were done, how long is it valid for?
That's a good question. So you're correct. There's not a lot of work that we could do to pursue this project without doing this preliminary engineering. This is kind of the next thing in front of us. So that engineering includes a lot of things, but would start with survey of the corridor. So that's both property survey and topographical survey. And moving forward from that, an engineering consultant would start to develop what does this corridor look like, and they'll be looking at the bridge inspections that we have for the structures that are out there now. They'll be looking at the culverts. They'll be looking at what condition are things in general, what kind of work would need to happen to bring that corridor into a place where it could become a trail like this. That would include removal of that rail infrastructure and maybe some repairs or rehabilitation or changes to culverts and bridges to make that safe, and how do we retrofit maybe a timber deck on top of a rail bridge in order to provide a trail surface for going across that existing railroad bridge and other things. So that's kind of the next step to move forward with. And I apologize, what was the second half of your question?
How long the results are valid from an engineering point of view?
Yeah, yep. So if we were to partially design this, do that preliminary design, that design work is pretty good for a while. What would need to be updated if a significant amount of time were to pass would be the cost estimates, just to make sure that we're using the right unit cost for the different items that are in the design to be constructed. We couldn't bid it off of, cost estimates that were probably more than 5 years old or less. And that's something we do regularly on all of our projects before we bid, is we make sure our cost estimates are up to date. We want to make sure we can bid in a competitive environment and award projects with good fiscal responsibility, and having good engineers' cost estimates for us is an important part of that. So that's certainly something that we would need to update if the design were to sit for a period of time.
All right, any further questions of DOT?
Dave Noonan, Meadow Lane. Dakota, the initial investment was about $600,000, which Cumberland's asking for about $12,000. What would be the initial cost estimate that Cumberland would be on the hook for if it went to full scale?
To construction? Yes. Yeah. So the question was, moving from this preliminary engineering that we're talking about, what costs might we be looking at in terms of construction moving forward? So, like I said before, a project like this is probably in the $1 to $2, maybe a little bit more $1 million per mile for construction. So if we're talking just over 2.5 miles here in Cumberland, that's a handful of millions of dollars potentially in Cumberland. And again, this is currently a 10-mile project that's proposed across Portland, Falmouth, Cumberland, and Yarmouth. So the cost estimates in total would reflect that entire cost. Yes, thank you. So it can depend a little bit on funding sources. Federal funding is going through a major reauthorization here, headed into the next federal fiscal year. So we don't really have a crystal ball looking into the future of that until Congress passes that federal transportation bill. And that is a regular thing, happens every 5 years for federal transportation dollars. But given status quo in the future, if that were to be the case in our local cost sharing policy, probably 10% would be continuing to be the local cost share.
Great. Anybody else want to ask Dakota a question?
Eben Sweetser, I live on Blanchard Road. Just a technical question. The current status of the rail line, has it been abandoned officially? And if not, do we see the Surface Transportation Board having to approve anything?
Thank you. So in terms of railroad abandonment, this does not count as an abandoned railroad. Maine DOT, through the Maine State Rail Preservation Act, will retain all of the rights that we currently retain regarding this corridor and the underlying authority to maintain it as a rail corridor. We'll make sure the bridges and other infrastructure is still inspected and kept in viable shape moving forward, whether there is a trail or rail infrastructure on the corridor. So our position is that it does not require Surface Transportation Board action, or does not count as abandonment of a rail line.
Well, thank you.
Hi, Greg Wiesner, Labrador Lane. So first question is, so access on Tuttle Road, while not determined, would eventually be part of the discussion. Maybe yes, maybe no, we don't know, but that would be part of this discovery process. And then two, is where the track sits today fully controlled by you all, or do you need approval from anyone else before you were to go forward?
So where the track sits today, as far as I know, is fully controlled by Maine DOT. It's a state-owned rail corridor. I don't, as far as I understand, I don't think we have any other rights held by others, easements or other rights in regards to that. And I apologize. What was your other question?
Access on
Oh,
Tuttle Road.
yes, yep. Yes, yep, yeah. I can't speak for sure if Tuttle Road would work or not, but I think this design process would be what we'd have to work through in order to answer that question. So I do think it should be included in that preliminary design.
Thank you, Dakota. Anybody else have a question? Go ahead, Bruce.
All right, Dakota, assume that the preliminary engineering work is done within the funding available by the state and within the 12,000 that the four communities will each be expected to contribute, and that the preliminary stuff is full and complete and all of that nature. At that point, is the project and the involvement of each community all back to the starting gate based upon the preliminary work for a new analysis of ongoing cost, ongoing responsibility, and related issues?
Yep. If I can clarify, if you're asking if, if the decision point comes back here to the town at that point, as far as further financial involvement from the town, is that correct? Moving into construction and finishing design and that kind of thing. Yes, yep. So as we mentioned today, this conversation is really specific to the preliminary engineering and the local cost share involved in that. We'd be back in front of council and working with Matt and town staff and others as needed, as we approach some of these other milestones and approach, seeking construction funding. We certainly would not seek federal dollars without making sure that we have, all of the picture built. That would include both our share and local shares as well. So we'll be back in front of the town for support and decision points on that in the future.
Bruce, you got a question for Dakota?
Two questions. Number one, do you folks is putting up parking lots at Johnson Road and Yarmouth? And if we put in the Tuttle thing, are parking lots included, and what size might they be?
So parking lots or trailheads, they are eligible for most of the federal funding sources that we have access to. So we could develop them if there's available right-of-way and a feasible design to do that. So I don't know if any parking fits at Tuttle Road. Maybe just what we're talking about there, if something fits, would be just a connector up to the roadway, a connector pathway from the rail corridor up to the roadway. But you mentioned Johnson Road. I'm not sure exactly. Some of that might come down to some discussions after we've surveyed the corridor. That's actually exactly how we found room for parking in Brownfield in a project we're designing right now. Is after we started design and things, we knew we didn't own any extra width there. But after surveying the corridor and beginning design, we realized that if we pushed the trail over a handful of feet, we could probably fit a few parking spaces. So some of those things will come up and be worked through as far as the details and design.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have already said this, but I didn't catch it. What are you going to use the $60,000 for? What is that used for?
So that would be direct participating match within the same contract that this entire $600,000 would be used for. So that is the preliminary engineering effort. That would be hiring a design consultant, engineering consultant to do the work to evaluate the corridor and design the project. And all of those dollars would be spent as participating dollars in that contract together. Yep.
Right. Any questions? Go ahead, Jack.
Jacqueline Story, 25 Shirley Lane. Actually, technically 29 now. A lot of my questions had been answered, but I do still have a couple. As an abutter, what will this project limit my property rights to? So, for example, sometimes with trails, you can't hunt close to them. So I come from a hunting family where we are all along the trail and have been hunting there for generations. So is that something like that is going to affect that? That's my first one. I'll go one at a time.
Sure, that's helpful for me. Thank you for the question. Hunting or other rights impacted. Speaking generally about property rights, we won't know for sure about any impacts, whether temporary or permanent, until we have both survey and at least some preliminary design done. That's pretty common for us. We often do have temporary project impacts with many of our transportation projects. That could include a construction worker having to stand on a front lawn to regrade the side of the road, or it could mean a temporary construction easement to get equipment across somewhere where we can't get it another place to get down to the work site, or a number of other reasons. Permanent property rights, permanent property impacts do happen with transportation. I would not anticipate many of them. Certainly with a project like this, the 10-mile project that we have for the Mountain Division Trail up Freiburg to Hiram, that's 10 miles, and as it's designed now, has no temporary or permanent impacts to private property. As far as other activities like hunting, that really is not regulated by Maine DOT. If the municipalities wanted to create rules around the trail, that would be up to the municipalities. And I certainly would say, even though it's not a trail now, I'm not sure that folks should be shooting across the state-owned rail corridor. So if that's happening, I'd just be cognizant of that. I can't say for sure about rules on the trail. I think that's something we'd have to work with the managing entities as we move forward with this, with that interlocal entity or with the municipalities.
And then my next question would be what the use of the trail will be. So there's been lots of talk about it being a walking trail, running, biking, all of that type of things. But what about, like, for example, up north, trails like this are used by ATVs and they're actually managed by ATV, like coalitions, I guess. I don't, the word is escaping me.
Yep. So you're correct. There are a lot of trails that are kind of single-use trails or dual-use, multi-use trails with ATV clubs, snowmobile clubs involved, and others. With this one, the Rail Use Advisory Council did recommend in its final recommendations that it be primarily a biking and walking trail for non-motorized use. So I think that's what we'd be moving forward with. I don't think we foresee allowing snowmobile or ATV use here. If there is a lot of interest in that with the municipalities, certainly something to bring up and have in conversation, but generally I think it would be a paved biking, walking, human scale, non-motorized type use.
And then just to follow up on that answer, based on everything that you have said to answers to other questions, it would be the town that's then responsible for policing no ATV use with no access from the town?
But I'll jump in on that. So generally, yes, as far as law enforcement, it would be working with, the relevant law enforcement agencies that work in the area. Maine DOT will retain responsibilities that relate to land rights. So that would be if there is persistent trespassing, if there are trespass issues from abutters or someone builds something on the corridor or some other kind of land right issue, Maine DOT would continue to handle those types of things to protect the integrity of the corridor. So I think if there was some kind of a persistent trespass or problem issue, it'd be something that we'd be probably communicating with the towns on pretty closely.
And then I think this is my last one for now. Kind of a follow-up to what Andrew was asking about with the involvement with CMP, since that's also going down right now. You said that there has been some talks. Has there been discussion about the new high voltage lines that they are presumably putting in there being under the trail and doing a joint project with that at all?
Unfortunately, I'm not up to date enough on the CMP conversation to be able to speak for sure if where the power infrastructure is to be located, but that's an answer I could get from a few other folks at Maine DOT. But,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, unless there's any other questions, we'll go now to public comment on this. Come up and tell us what you think. Joe? And there is just to let everybody know, there is a 5-minute limit.
We'll buy some time at the end, right? My name is Joe Comiska. My wife and I have lived on Middle Road for 40 years. Greetings and welcome to Cumberland's newest council member and new chair. I urge you not to join the Casco Bay Trail Board of Supervisors interlocal agreement and to not pledge any money for MDOT's preliminary engineering study to remove the tracks on the rail line. There are many reasons not to move forward with the support of the Casco Bay Trail: privacy, environment, safety, economic development, and financial. The website I have, stopcascobaytrail.com, outlines many of these concerns. Tonight I'll focus on the financial hit to Cumberland. The interlocal agreement will lock Cumberland into a financial program that is not defined and has a 20-year term. Even if Cumberland were to withdraw from this contract in the future, the town would still be liable for any financial commitments or liabilities incurred in the creation and management of activities created by the newly formed Casco Bay Trail Board of Supervisors. The contract creates the pathway to position the new group as another bureaucracy in Maine, complete with employment options and operational expenses. This is where your maintenance will come from, once all of that is put together. So much of the work done on this trail has been behind closed doors, and the trail groups seem to delight in the fact that they've been able to keep any opposition unaware of the ultimate goal of ripping out the track. The trail groups have created a broad coalition of very vocal supporters. How many new costs will the trail groups create once they have local communities positioned to guarantee all of their expenses? The cost of removing the rail line, just the removal, is between $47 and $55 million. The yearly maintenance is conservatively estimated at between $100,000 to $200,000. Can the town realistically join this group, the program that offers no benefits to the residents? There is no public access to the trail in Cumberland. During the development of the town's comprehensive plan, it was revealed that only a minority of the residents use the existing trails in our town. We do not need any more. How can the town enter into this legal contract with the potential of a huge tax impact on its residents? The recent property tax bill was devastating, and the revaluation is going to significantly affect the majority of residents. MDOT picked up 100% of the Mountain Division engineering study cost. Why are they asking Cumberland and other towns to pay? Why are they calling the $12,000 Cumberland's share? Especially when now we have a nonprofit group that's putting their money up to have an equal say into how it's developed with the residents of the other towns. Several town officials have stated that the trail would happen without them, regardless of how the town votes. This statement is misleading, and it is put forth by trail proponents as misinformation in order to get people to vote for it. It is not true that the trail will go on without Cumberland, for only Cumberland has jurisdiction over the part of the trail going through their town. No one else can claim that power or override Cumberland's wishes. A question came up to Dakota Hewlett from MDOT at a Brownfield town meeting. The question was, what happens if Brownfield does not sign the maintenance agreement? And Dakota said, I just asked the commissioner that, and he said the trail will not go out to bid without all of the towns signing the agreement. It's very likely the trail will not happen, unquote. MDOT is at least $400 million behind in funds for projects that have been approved. Soon, MDOT will be listing all the approved projects they are postponing or canceling. We hope the Casco Bay Trail is one of them. Why sign a commitment at this time? I'm also concerned how the town council feels it can move forward with this vote. As mentioned by some of the council members, at the Cumberland Town Council meeting of September 22nd, 2024, it was determined that there were too many issues and questions to move forward with the support of a trail resolution. These questions still exist. Indeed, there are many more questions as this project rolls forward at full steam. At that meeting, the council directed a meeting to be set up with abutting landowners. That meeting never happened. Please protect Cumberland's taxpayers and do not join the Casco Bay Trail Board of Supervisors interlocal agreement. Do not support the Casco Bay Trail line. The Casco Bay Trail isn't even a nice-to-have type of program. It will prove to be an economic development disaster if the rails are moved. The region and state would be much better positioned to have the rail line offer modern transportation services. The line between Portland and Auburn is part of America's first international rail line. The railway connects Portland to Montreal. This can be the start of future expansion north to Montreal, but we need to preserve this rail line to accomplish that. Rail proponents have identified the federal dollars to accomplish how we convert this line to electrified passenger rail in 2 to 3 years and run 20 trips per day between Maine's largest metro areas.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Evan?
All right. Eben Sweetser here from Blanchard Road. I'm going to run out of time, so I'll just start saying that I would definitely support this first step of getting the preliminary stuff done. But I want to just come down and talk a little bit because we did think a lot about this on the Comprehensive Plan Committee. And my background is rail and rail operations, and I've been a long-time advocate for rail. So I think, some things to consider in your discussion is, and we talked about this in our transportation chapter, was what does the future of rail in Cumberland look like? And we didn't want to do anything in the plan that would make it so that we couldn't have any sorts of rail access in the future. When we look at industry locations, we have Quarry Road, which is our one industry zone, highway commercial district, if I'm correct. And then we have the light industrial by Story Brothers there. So I don't think that rail will actually come back. I think the economics are bad. The number one thing that a lot of the rail industry is facing, except for the big railroads, is liability. So the liability insurance for a lot of small railroads or public agencies is pretty insane. Liability insurance has gotten so high, especially post Lac-Mégantic, that you can't build or operate new commuter rail lines. It doesn't make economic sense on the insurance side. So, as much as I would love to see that rail line come back, I think there's a good chance it never will. But I think you need to consider that. What's the long-term plan? What's the goal of the town? I think that additionally, I do think it would be a good asset for the town. I would use it, in defense of other people here. When you build a trail, you create a coalition of users that it makes it really hard to go back. Maryland dealt with this in DC, right outside of DC, but between Bethesda and Silver Spring. They built a rail trail, and then now they're building a new subway system on the line, so most of the trail will be gone. Some of it's still there. Actually, most of it's still there. But the point is, once they built the trail, it became super popular, and then it almost derailed the building of the public transit line. So just when you get into your discussion, I think those are some things you should consider. And what else? I think that was basically my big points on that. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks very much. Steve Moriarty again from 48 Drown Road. As Matt alluded to during his report, for the past year and a half, I've been chair of the Comprehensive Plan Committee. So what I'm doing tonight is sharing some information with you, not necessarily playing the role of an advocate one way or the other. But you'll be pleased to know that on June 25, the committee voted to approve a plan. And that plan went online, I believe, on the town's website the very next day, June 26, together with the 3 appendices as well. And as Matt mentioned, it's coming up for public hearing on July 30 in accordance with the state statute. What I want to share with you was some of the preliminary work that we did in the late spring of 2025, just over a year ago. We sent out a questionnaire or a survey to everybody town-wide. And there was a question, and I'm referring to question 30, number 1, question 30 titled Transportation, which is found on page 35 of the survey results. And the first question was solicited input on the following point. The town should invest in developing more walkable/bikeable connections between areas of town and neighborhoods such as sidewalks, bike paths, or road connections. Now, the response to that was striking. 68% of the 1,086 respondents either strongly agreed with that statement or somewhat agreed. 17% of respondents were neutral and apparently had no opinion. only 15% of the respondents were either somewhat disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. So I just ask you to bear that in mind and take it into consideration as we go forward. So this was part of I was pleased, obviously, to serve with Eben, with Bill, and with Tig and Bob as council liaison members, and we went through the transportation issues very, very thoroughly. The transportation chapter, which is chapter 12, was unanimously approved in late June, as I indicated. And each chapter in the plan is followed by a series of goals and recommended actions. There's been some discussion tonight about Greevy Road and pedestrian safety townwide and so forth. And I don't want anybody to think that the Comp Plan Committee disregarded those issues. For example, some of the recommendations that we adopted include adopt a sidewalk expansion priority order, expand sidewalks, integrate pedestrian improvements into all major roadway projects. Others include prioritize roadway maintenance and pavement management, integrate safety improvements into all roadway maintenance and capital projects. I think you get the gist of our recommendations. But pertinent to tonight's agenda item is the following recommendation regarding the proposed rail trail. And the committee voted unanimously to support the following action item. Support development of a rail trail or multi-use path along the main DOT/St. Lawrence and Atlantic Rail Corridor consistent with regional planning efforts. That is non-specific. We had no data about costs. Before us, we weren't weighing the costs of preliminary engineering versus final implementation or final construction. So when you see the report, if you have not yet had an opportunity to do that, you'll find that recommendation in there, and it is the unanimous opinion of the committee. I'm a little confused about Joe's comment about don't sign any agreement, and maybe this requires clarification from Dakota. I'm under the impression that investing $12,000 in preliminary design and engineering is not, or does not require the signing of an agreement, and doesn't, as I understand it, bind the town to anything else in terms of cost or involvement or liability until the preliminary work is done. And then you start over again with the benefit of that information that's been gathered to a large extent, to an overwhelming extent, at state expense. I'd be curious to know what the answer to that question is. So, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Very much.
Anybody else want to be heard on this?
Wayne Curtis, Middle Road. Steve, I have a question. You were speaking about the comprehensive plan. How many abutters were on that comprehensive plan committee? Because you talked 17% said they didn't want something about the trail. So 17%, considering there's only about 55 people down on Middle Road, and there's what, 3,000 families in Cumberland, 3,700, something like that? That's a lot. So the numbers are a little deceiving. I'll let you respond. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I do want to clear up any misunderstanding there may be. We started out with, I think, 18 members on the committee in January 25. They came from all three regions of town. Some people dropped off as we went along, and we ended up with 14. The representatives from the For side, let me strike that, because this is technically probably not part of the For side under the charter, but rather part of Cumberland Center. But we had representatives still on the committee from both the For side and the Center, as well as the West, as we completed our work. The percentage figure that I gave you was from the public opinion survey of 1 year ago. And I referenced question 30 of the survey, which was answered by almost 1,100 people townwide. I don't know where they live. They were answered, the question was answered anonymously, so we can't track them back. But I mentioned that, I'll break it down, 8% somewhat disagreed with investing in a project like this, and 7% strongly disagreed, for a combined total of 15%.
Wayne, go ahead up there. You've got your.
Again, Steve, you only have 55 people that live that are abutters down on the middle road that subject. You said, what was it, 1,700 people responded? I question how many were actually from the middle road.
On the response to this particular question, I said 1,086 responded, okay? I have no idea, as I said, where they live in town, and we can't figure that out, can't find that out. That's not information that we asked people to disclose, so it's not a matter of record. It can't be, drawn out from town records or from the electronic records of survey responses. So I don't know who were among those almost 1,100 respondents.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else have a question? Or, excuse me, want to come up and speak? Please, sir.
Yes, hello, my name is Jonathan Labry. I live on Main Street in Cumberland, and I really appreciate the conversation and all the questions, and I personally am really excited about the idea of a rail trail through our community that connects multiple communities. I commute by bike frequently to Portland. I've had to change my route several times to find safer routes. I would love to have the opportunity to bike mostly into Portland on a route that's safe. We do use the trails in Cumberland for hiking, for biking, for cross-country skiing. We use the trails in other communities, like I'm sure a lot of us do. So I'm here just to put my support behind the town voting to put the $12,000 in, get a seat at the table, understand the issues. Personally, I'd love to see a Cumberland access to the trail, which I would hope could be worked through this. But anyway, I'm just here to put my support behind this proposal and have Cumberland make a tiny contribution right now to something that I think could be just a huge asset for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up. Next.
Bruce Owen, Blanchard Road again. A little concerned, I'm not quite sure where to start, but first of all, I'm against this project to begin with. I don't see enough benefit for Cumberland to spend any money on it whatsoever. And the young lady here that brought up the point that I hadn't even thought of that's so obvious. There's no access for emergency vehicles or maintenance or anything. That's a killer right there for me. You got to go all the way to Johnson Road or Yarmouth to do anything, unless you roll over somebody's property. And if it was my property, depending on the incident, I might go along with it, might not. Now, back to another topic for Mr. Moriarty, a question or two. Did you say that the committee recommended this trail thing? Was it on the survey as a direct question? Would you support the rail trail thing? Was that a question, or was that just a committee recommendation? Yeah.
All right, Bruce, I appreciate it's hard to sort of distill the events of 18 months into something that's, just that definitive. I will repeat again, the question on the community survey that was out for 5 weeks in late May and early July of last year was, the town should invest in developing more walkable / bikeable connections between areas of town and neighborhoods such as sidewalks, bike paths, and road connections. Those who answered the question were asked to indicate that they strongly agree, somewhat agree, they were neutral, they somewhat disagree, or they strongly disagree. So it didn't mention this particular project, it mentioned bikeable connections between areas of town. Okay? So then the plan itself, which has been approved by the Comprehensive Plan Committee, which is nothing more than a recommendation at this point to the Planning Board, did include a recommended action item to support development of a rail trail or multi-use path along the main DOT/St. Lawrence and Atlantic Rail Corridor consistent with regional planning efforts. So that was the final, that was a specific recommendation of the committee on this particular proposed project. This goes to public hearing on July 30, and to give you a heads up as to what happens from that point on, the plan then goes to the planning board. They'll do their own public hearing, or more than one. They will then make a recommendation to the council to either approve or disapprove the plan, or maybe offer some changes. Then it goes to the council, which is the only body in town which has the authority to actually adopt a comprehensive plan. And then the council, presumably late this fall or thereabouts, will hold at least one public hearing, maybe more, and the council will vote whether or not to adopt as originally presented or perhaps as amended along the way. I hope that answers your questions.
I'm not sure.
Bruce, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I got a rebuttal on this.
Well, no, this is not a debate between you and.
No, but we need to make sure that people get it clear here, what we're talking about. This rail trail was not asked as a specific question on the comprehensive plan, just to be clear. So we don't really know what the town thinks about this. Yeah. Next is, on all the other question that I voted yes on, the connecting with sidewalks and bike paths and stuff like that. I voted yes on it, but I didn't think, first of all, the rail trail doesn't connect any two parts of town. It's not part of that question, in my estimation. It doesn't connect any two parts of town. It's hard, I cannot see, coordinating those two items.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else want to come up? Please. Steve, you got something real quick?
Okay, just real quickly, I want to mention the flash vote that was taken just last week.
Yeah, but it's
Our
in the
committee
materials.
didn't consider this because it hadn't happened yet. But as you know, question 4 very, very specifically relates to the $12,000 contribution to the project. And as I read the numbers, 78% of respondents indicated they probably or definitely would support that contribution. And 15% said definitely not or probably not. So the same rough percentage distribution between pro and between supporters and non-supporters, both in the survey last year and in the flash vote of last week.
Thanks, Steve.
Good evening. My name's Nancy Grant, and I'm actually on the board of the Casco Bay Trail. I lived in Cumberland from 88 to 98, and then North Yarmouth another 10 years. But I don't live here anymore, but I came tonight because I wanted to kind of hear what people's questions and concerns were, and maybe answer some questions that weren't able to be answered. I did want to say one thing. Sometimes our little nonprofit is referred to as the Mighty Trail Lobby. Our little Casco Bay Trail Alliance is literally 9 volunteers. We don't have a single staff, and we do everything in the open. We are a group with so much integrity, and we have followed every single step that we have been told to follow from the DOT, from GPCOG, from the various towns that we work in. And we even, this tiny little group, got a law passed that authorized this rail corridor to be an interim trail. That is a huge amount of work, and we followed every step along the way. I wanted to mention why our group had donated a 1/5 share for the total 60,000 local share. And that is because there's so much concern right now in all of the towns we're working in of property taxes going up, of hidden costs presenting themselves, and we just wanted to show that we feel that pain too, and we're willing to take money that we have raised privately to try to help the various towns. And we are in the midst of developing our long-term fundraising plan that includes raising a lot of that 10% local match privately, because we appreciate that it's a heavy lift for everybody. I have, you know, I know that there's so many benefits of these trails, and when I think of it as economic development. I think of it as recreation, physical health, public health, environmental, transportation, and all you need to do is wander on down to the Eastern Trail between South Portland and Kittery and see how that trail is being used on an everyday basis. You can also go down to Portland and look at some of the multi-use trails there. And it is true that if you build that trail, you're not going to be able to imagine life without it. The last couple of things is, you know, we have heard that Cumberland was really not as enthusiastic as some of the other towns about this trail. And so we were really pleased when you all did that flash vote, you know, I guess it was last week. And I hope all of you have looked at the results of that, because it really shows an awful lot of support for the trail. And we have tons of people in this town who regularly support us in a variety of ways, whether it's fundraising, whether it's advocacy, or, you know, one-on-one trying to find new supporters. The last thing I'll just mention is right around when I moved in, Twinbrook had just been built, and I was too busy with small kids to pay a whole lot of attention to what was going on behind the scenes. But I know that there were a lot of people in this town that were worried that we didn't need it, that it was going to be too expensive for us. And that is one of the gems of this town. And I don't live here anymore, but I sometimes visit it. I know lots of people from out of town who come to visit, and I see it full of kids and people of all ages, no matter what time of year I come. And I think that's the way this trail will be for this town. So I hope you support it. It's $12,000 now. I think it will be $12,000 really well spent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Thank you. Greg Wiesner on Labrador Lane. So I'm a big fan of trails generally. I have had trails cut through my property for as long as I've lived in Cumberland. I had them cut through my property in North Yarmouth. I've never had a problem with people coming through the trails. The trails have never been beat up. We've never had vandalism. We've never had theft. So the fears associated with that, I'm not quite sure I understand. When I look at what goes on in South Portland, they go right through people's yards practically. There hasn't been problems that I've been aware of there. I've used trails as well in parts of other states in this country. I've also used them in Europe. They are a tremendous resource that ends up in development for the towns. We're losing access to the traditional trails around here, the snowmobile trails, et cetera. They're getting cut off as property development happens. So the opportunity to have trail on land that people don't own, right? It's owned by the state, as I understand it. So it's not taking land away from anyone else. It's actually land that's already controlled. The $12,000, as I said, I think it's money well spent. It'll give us an opportunity to put input into the way the trails get built. With respect to access through this town, I know for some folks, people think Yarmouth, Johnson Road, very, very far. I get that. Tuttle Road is where the access should be for this town. But the reality is it links us through to a trail system that will give people safe access to be able to walk, ride, bike, et cetera, off roads, which is something that really matters. I'm sure you read the paper, you see what's happening right now in Portland with respect to pedestrian accidents. So the opportunity for young people, old people, anyone in between to have places that are safe to ride, bike, et cetera, is really important. I don't think we need to decide right now whether it's going to go through. I think we need to decide whether we're willing to spend $12,000. And I think that the money is there if it's something that you want to do. You have the right to answer questions. The part about, reaching out to abutters, I think that's very reasonable. I just point out that they are abutters. They don't own this land, right? So that is something that has to be taken into consideration. So with that, I thank you for your time and consideration. I think the conversation has been great, and I'm glad someone brought up the flash vote, because that was exactly what this town should be doing, is reaching out to people directly to get the pulse of what's happening. So it seems like it worked. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Hello again. In regards to that flash vote, actually, I found the question actually quite misleading, because it says the Maine DOT and regional partners are moving forward with a trail project that will use former trail moving forward with. That meant no matter what, if we participate or not, they're moving forward, which we found out is pretty much not true at this point. So I find that question extremely misleading myself. So I think that there should be a new flash vote that said, would you like to participate? Not that they're moving forward, but would you like to participate? And you'd get a much more, I think, real answer, because if they're moving forward no matter what with us, yes, I would agree we should go forward with it ourselves as a town council and as a town. But that's not the way that's the way it was written, and it's not true. The other thing is, when you do the math behind it, committing the 12,000, yes, that's very little, but no matter what math I came up with, if they do move forward with it, we're on the hook for $500,000. So point blank, $500,000 at the 10%. So that meant whether it's just our 2.5 miles or if it's the full 10 miles, it's $500,000. And then pay to play, really, to $12,000 for a seat at the table. Everybody keeps saying that. I don't like the pay to play aspect of it. Not a fan at all of it. I think we should just be part of it or not. We shouldn't be asked to pay to play for this. And many people have said the no access for Cumberland. I think the biggest thing that resonated for me is if somebody does get injured on that trail and there's no access for emergency services, that's a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Chuck Staples. I'm on Harris Road, and I just wanted to put support in for the trail. I do bike in 2 to 3 days a week into Portland. It is getting busier. I don't think people have talked about Route 9 is so packed right now, and Route 9 into through Falmouth. I did get hit there by a car who pulled in front of me and turned right. And I've got hit one other time, somebody pulled in front of me and turned right. But I think that another thing is if you take a small percentage of those people off that road, you're also easing traffic. So that's something else to consider. But Cumberland, North Yarmouth, it's not getting smaller. We're not getting less houses. We're not getting less people. I think that this is a trail for the future and a trail for future access, not just today's town. And I think that when they do look at the study, there probably is access on that Tuttle Road point. If you look at the bridge now and you drive over it, the bridge is going to be on the left, even the right-hand side there. You could probably put a handful of parking spots on the right, but we won't know unless they do the study. So I just wanted to put support in for it.
Thank you, Chuck. Anybody else?
Again, my name is Jacqueline Story, and I'm a resident on Shirley Lane here in Cumberland and one of the many abutting property owners along this corridor. I've previously spoken during public comments. I've met individually with several council members, and I've submitted written comments about my opinions and my questions via email regarding my stance on this. But I wanted to start right now by thanking the council tonight, because whether or not we agree on what happens with this corridor and what your vote is, tonight was the first time I actually felt heard by many of you based on conversations and emails. And so I really thank you guys for listening and taking into consideration what the abutters' concerns are. In addition to that, I do want to speak on the process of which this has gone about, which for those, many of you who have served with my aunt, that's something she continuously harped on, so that might make you chuckle that that also is part of my opinion as well there. After re-watching the meeting of this from September 2024, I was given actually a little bit of hope in addition to tonight, and then email responses as well. Because I heard council members say that Cumberland needed a seat at the table, that abutters deserve to have a voice. I heard concerns about things moving too quickly before important questions had been answered. And perhaps most importantly for tonight, I watched this council vote to postpone any actions pending a meeting between abutters and Maine DOT. To my knowledge as an abutter, and some of you have made that point, that meeting never happened. That night, nearly every council member expressed unanswered questions or concerns about the project. One council member even warned, we have 2.6 miles of abutters who are not in favor of this. When was the last time we threw 3 miles of abutters under the bus? And they had referenced some stuff with Rise going on at that point, where literally neighbors of a restaurant we weren't willing to throw under the bus. And if at the time that person had said, and if that's what we are going to vote in favor, that's what we're voting in favor of, if we vote in favor of this, we're going to throw them, the abutters, under the bus and then back over them and back up and run over them again. So Dakota, while you are here tonight, and I sincerely thank you for being here and answering questions to your best of your ability, there are still, in my opinion, a lot of unanswered questions. There were a lot of questions that we don't know that yet. Again, those are still unanswered questions. And they're not minor details. They're questions that you guys have raised, that you've listened to abutters about. Those are fundamental questions that should be answered before additional taxpayers' dollars are committed. It isn't simply about whether someone supports the trail or opposes the trail. It's about whether the process is transparent, whether commitments made publicly by this town council are honored, and whether the residents most directly affected by this trail are genuinely included in decisions that are going to impact them for generations. As I said, as an abutter, I don't expect everyone on the town council to agree with me, but I do expect that this town council honors its commitment, that when you say residents will have a voice, that voice should matter. When you say abutters should be part of a conversation, they should. When you postpone a decision until a meeting occurs, those meetings should happen before any further discussion or votes take place, which is why I'm extremely disappointed this is even on the agenda tonight. Otherwise, those commitments that you made publicly as a town council, and I know not all of you were on it at that point, but those commitments that you made and those votes that you made publicly become little more than empty words and empty votes. So tonight, I'm asking you to honor the process that this council committed to. Meet with the abutters, get concrete answers to the questions, understand the long-term costs and responsibilities, and then, and only then, ask Cumberland taxpayers to commit additional public funds. That isn't anti-rail or trail. It's pro-process, it's pro-transparency, and it's pro-accountability. It's what the people of Cumberland should expect from their local officials. So in closing, if this council's words are going to mean something now and in the future, then the process that you promised should happen before the vote takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anybody else before we bring it back to the council for discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with the council. Jeff?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, are we allowed to ask more questions of Dakota first before we discuss and vote?
Sure, you can. It's part of your.
Are we going down the line with that still?
Go ahead and you can ask as many questions
Okay,
you want. and
got
bring
it,
them
got it,
back
got
up.
it. Got it.
You know what? I don't have any more questions. Why don't you ask your question? It might, if it's all right,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to
Go ahead,
then
Dennis.
go back.
Okay, so I want to just make the language really explicit because I'm still not 100% clear on we call it pay to play because that's essentially what it's being framed as. If we do not give $12,000 forward right now to this process, does that mean that we do not have a seat on a hypothetical municipal steering committee as well? Or would we still be involved in that if it happened?
So I'm a little bit concerned or confused about how the pay-to-play part came into a little bit.
We've been multiple times, even 2 years ago, we have been told that, if you don't have a resolution in support of this thing, then process is going to go on without you. You're not going to have any input as a town. And with this as well, put in the 12K for the design study so that you can have some input on it. So from what I hear, and I may be misunderstanding, I've read it as pretty clearly like, unless you sign your name on the dotted line on a resolution, or unless you put these funds in, you are cut out of the conversation.
Yeah, let me
Planning
clarify
process.
a little bit. The local cost share policy would apply to us doing the project. If the town decides you're not ready for the project in town and aren't ready to participate or aren't interested in participating, that likely means we will not do the project within Cumberland's limits, or the geographic limits of any other town, should they take that position, until such a point as the municipalities are ready for the project, and abutting concerns and fiscal concerns and other concerns are taken care of. So it's not like we're going to build the trail in Cumberland whether you support with the $12,000 or not. It's likely that that's the local match for the project, and without that we can't do the project, and would probably make the decision to utilize those funds on some project elsewhere.
And so for the municipalities and now a private organization who also wants to donate money toward this, what do these get you? Are you on a future committee perhaps, and you're going to vote as a stakeholder on decisions that are made? What is this? Everyone's sharing it, but now it's not just municipalities, it's also private organizations that can join into it. How does that change the dynamic, and what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that non-municipal entities are going to have feedback in something that's happening in a town that they won't actually be responsible for potentially maintaining? They're not going to be the ones paying for EMS to, I guess, it wouldn't be us because we wouldn't have access. It would be us putting the burden on our mutual aid partners of Yarmouth and Falmouth to deal with anything that happens in Cumberland, since we wouldn't have access, potentially. But I need to understand really explicitly who the players are, like how much power each entity has to affect the design, whether or not this is just NDOT's going to do their design, what works, that's what it is. Like, I don't want this to be just kind of like some symbolic gesture of support with no teeth behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair perspective to have. I would say certainly involvement from the municipality on the design side is important, and working with whoever the entity or entities who will be maintaining the facility moving forward as those conversations progress as well over the next couple of years. How do they intend to maintain it, and how does that impact the design, and does that impact the amount of fencing or the type of fencing we might want to use? And those are the types of discussions that will happen with materials and dimensions and that kind of thing. So certainly would be important to have the municipalities involved or other entities who would be doing the maintenance in a more of a collaborative way through design. Maine DOT will hold the design contract for this, but certainly welcome a collaborative design approach that's similar to how we do a lot of our planning studies and design of some of these more non-roadway type projects.
Do you have an example of a past project that had this kind of approach, where it was like, whether there was a steering committee or just kind of like an example of like start to finish project where there's been that, where I could like look at it and see how it worked in the past?
The examples I can think of are more like downtown town center reimagining type infrastructure projects, large grants and things like that. I can't think of a trail project off the top of my head that has been done in recent years that was implemented quite that way. But I can share my contact information, or town manager can, and I can certainly share some examples of what that kind of collaborative process works like, and usually starts with like a study kind of phase and then moving toward design.
Okay. I had one more. It was mainly, again, on the access piece, like, because that's really key here. Like, when we talk about the flash vote, it didn't say, would you support a trail that we don't actually have access to? You know, like, when you talk about MDOT owns the tracks, but there's no easements on it, like, whether it's a town easement to maintain it, like, the access isn't there. You're not responsible for the safety and the maintenance of it. So I'm having a hard time with maybe it can go in the Tuttle Bridge, maybe it can't. We'll have to find out, because that's kind of like a hard limit for me right now, is if we are supposed to be responsible for safety maintenance, it's meant to be used by Cumberland residents. How do they get there? Where's the access? Like, every town on this line should have had access as part of like the main assumption, I would say. So
yeah, I think that's ideal. The access decision here is not Maine DOT's. We did not draw the parcel map and did not draw the town boundaries, and if we placed the roads involved in the area, that was certainly a long time ago. So unfortunately, we're working with the geography we have and the land ownership we have with the project right now. But like I said before, if over time properties were to become available and towns or land conservancies or other organizations were to want to work toward that, or maybe if that has an avenue within your comprehensive planning or other things to secure additional public access in that area, it certainly wouldn't be something Maine DOT would be against. We're just working within the geography that we have with where the roads are and where Cumberland's municipal boundaries are.
One last thing, you said that you talked with the bridge project manager, and I think Matt, you mentioned that as well, and we had a resident email us saying, hey, like, why not just preserve some access there ahead of time as this bridge project is going on. And do you know when you would hear back from this project manager and whether or not they could, I don't know, change the plans or add an addendum to it or something to have that kind of access? Like,
yes.
Earmark it?
The answer to that is it won't be accommodated in this bridge project. This project was designed and permitted, multiple years out. Most of our big bridges are many years in advance, and at this point, we're well into real construction and probably can't make a change like that very easily. So it would be something that on the design side for the trail, we would look at the existing conditions, the new existing conditions, given the new bridge here soon, and see what we can work with that.
Okay. Matt, like, do we have any way to talk to the bridge project people and ask, like, because, when they dismantle the other side of the bridge, I know that, I've seen the plans, I know they're there, but do we have any, not poll, but like, is there any way as a town that we could ask them to amend it or, leave this open or, just preserve it?
Yeah, they meet, we do like a virtual meeting or an update about every 2 weeks. So I could definitely weigh in on or chime in on one of those. They're virtual, so I could bring that up as a question. One other thought that you had, Councilor Thorson, about the public safety response opportunity. Currently, we have a similar challenge on I-295. So, when we respond often to items on I-295, well, they're driving up to Yarmouth and hopping on there often to respond to incidents that take place, or even on 95. So there's some of those challenges that we may respond to. So as long as they would find the closest entry point if we had to that way, or mutual aid would be. I mean, ultimately it's just trying to respond to someone who may be in distress. So in this, you'd probably go down, if there was an access, you'd probably go down to the end of Middle Road and jump on in Yarmouth, or you could go down Johnson Road, depending upon where it's at. The other area, the Powell Road goes, right now is a paper street, but it dead ends right at there as well. So that presumably could also be looked at as an access point in the future.
Well, if you want to put an access for bikes right next to
Right.
two businesses with huge trucks.
Right.
Wait, Bob, go ahead. Were you done,
done.
Denise?
Yeah, I'm done.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to confirm what Matt said. We do have illegal access to it at Powell Road, so that's,
But as far as like the conversation at the Tuttle Road intersection there, that's something I'll jump in on one of those and raise a question too, just to help out as far as try to advance the ball on that. If it's a non-starter, then
Right.
they could probably say pretty quick too, or they could say, well, that's something you may want to engineer in the future, but right now it's not something they're going to take up.
And not even necessarily like access for, a safety vehicle, but just the equivalent of like a sidewalk, just so people
Yeah.
can get on and off.
Yeah,
Because-
oftentimes you may find that there's not parking, like, I've seen a lot of, bike ped trails where there's not parking access there.
Right.
It's, it's an entry point, really, more than anything else, where people will find that connectivity, like they might ride down Middle Road, which is really nice, and then jump in, or jump in and out of different access points to,
Right.
so it's sometimes it's quite fluid, but it'd be nice to have
Yeah, because,
a point.
I mean, Middle Road is still probably more dangerous for bicyclists than hopping on a trail. So having to go down Middle Road anyways, or up to either Yarmouth or Falmouth to get on the trail, kind of sucks. So,
Jeff?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions for
Do you have a
Dakota.
statement on it?
Yeah, I'm ready to go, so,
Okay.
unless somebody else has a question for Dakota.
I think we got statements from at least this.
Okay.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So, sorry, just before you sit down, you might have mentioned this and I missed it. What would the timeline look for? What timeline are we looking at for, if this goes through, the planning starts, the surveying starts, and then it's going to take X amount of time? And then when will we have a good idea of what the potential plan would be, and then, when construction would potentially start?
Yep, that's a great question, and I apologize if I didn't cover that part of it. This level of design, to where we would probably stop design until we have a great picture of construction funding, probably would take a year to 18 months to go through. Taking survey and getting that data processed does take some time, and working through some of these other things, evaluating some bridges and culverts, that kind of thing. So it's probably a year to 18 months until we had a look at that preliminary engineering to a point where we would have some cost estimates. And then from there, we at Maine DOT, working with the municipalities and any other relevant folks involved, would be kind of making a pivot to look toward construction funding. So we'd be looking at what federal grants are upcoming, what programs have eligibility for a project like this, and what are their timelines, what are their parameters, that type of thing. And that's pretty common. We have staff at Maine DOT who do that.
So we being DOT have funding for the design surveying, but not for the actual construction yet?
Correct. Yep. We don't have funding committed or identified for full construction of the 10 miles.
Okay. And you mentioned that sort of your normal process is that you don't really reach out to abutters or anything like that until you have something where funding has been identified, and then you start that process. That sort of goes along in tandem with the surveying and all. When in that process would we be looking at, actually reaching out and, talking with the abutters to hear their concerns, address their concerns in the design process, and try to make sure that everybody is, heard and their concerns are addressed?
Yeah, yep. I'll clarify. That's more specific to having a funded project. So now that we have a funded project and are working toward design, there is, early on in that process, in the mail, abutters will receive something called a property owner report. That's just a piece of paper that comes in the mail to any landowner that abuts a Maine DOT property, and it says kind of what Maine DOT is doing, and are you the current owner of the property? And that piece of paper asks if you confirm that you do own the abutting property, and send it back in. That helps us kind of have a starting point of who our abutters are and make sure that we know who we're working with. and that type of thing. And then there will be some online public engagement, and there can be some in-person public engagement as we move through the design process. But given some of what we've heard today, there's no reason we can't have a conversation with abutters or other stakeholders or folks with the town before that, even. If we want to keep this conversation going, I'm certainly willing to meet with folks, and we can pull in some others as needed.
That would be something that, Matt could and work with you and people around here to try to find a date that come back down and do this all over again.
Yeah, yep. I think Maine DOT would prefer if that is some kind of a public meeting. I don't know if you have a relevant town committee that could take place in, or maybe just a workshop or other place, but that would make sense to come here to the town office and hear concerns and have those conversations.
Bill, do you have something?
So this has been great. I love the comments that have come, and Denton, thank you for our information and for everybody both on the council and here. I think what we're at here is this initial commitment. I think is fair to ask, right, to show that the town has some interest in participating in this process. A lot of the questions and concerns are very valid, right? I respect everything that people have brought up. It makes sense. A lot of those questions, though, aren't going to get answered until you move forward with a little bit more information on the design process, right? So it's really difficult to go and have something to talk about and show people until you actually move it forward a little bit. And I think what happens is when you don't have that is you get a lot of misinformation and a lot of concerns, which are valid, but part of it is because you don't have the information to share with people so that they get an understanding of what's going on. And I say this because, as I alluded to earlier, I do this for a living, similar developed projects, right, in different parts of the country. And this is kind of a process that we follow where you go out and you do some initial engineering and you work on that before you really do a lot of engagement, because you don't have anything to show, right? And if you don't have something to show and discuss, then it becomes very difficult for people to get their heads around it, one, and to understand what the impacts are, and then you really don't have a basis to work with to help mitigate those impacts, right? So I see this as establishing a baseline. This does not commit us to spending a dime more on this rail trail, right? So if we get in here and we get some preliminary design work done, which is what this is, which hopefully we can incorporate with some of the work that CMP is proposing, right, which would be a real win, then we have a basis to talk with. We don't have to spend money in future on this, right? It's our choice. It's our choice. So I encourage us to move forward here, I think this is a great first step, and I applaud everyone for their input tonight. Thank you.
Dakota, you can, and I'll go to Tig, and then do you have anything at all?
I'm still Jeff. Oh, what?
Just don't forget about me. We're all good.
I'm still marinating.
So you want to go down to Jeff?
Yeah, go down to Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. So thank you to all the citizens who came forward, providing support of this project, and also those who voiced your concerns. Cumberland is very lucky to have the great recreational facilities we have here today. We have Twin Brooks, Ryan's Forest, Knights Pond. We have bike lanes on some of our roads. Are they the greatest? Probably not. But we have a lot more than other communities have. Right now, we have nothing formal in writing from Maine DOT about what this $12,000 is, what the neighboring communities' responsibilities are, what the anticipated maintenance cost is. There's nothing in writing, okay? That's my big concern right here. The other big concern is access for the citizens of town of Cumberland. In today's day of computer engineering, and I know a lot of smart engineers, and I can see what they can do with a computer. We should be able to answer whether or not we can access alongside that bridge project. I know the state has staff engineers. We're not asking you to design an interstate highway here. We're asking you to design a trail. You know, can we figure that out before we go any further? And it's a yes or no question. I know there's wetlands down there. So can we get in there or can we not? Right now, we don't know. And that's a big question the citizens deserve an answer on. It also plays into the public safety aspect. You know, we have the neighbors' concerns, and look what we've done in this community in the past for public works facilities and restaurants and everything else. We've really looked into listening to people's feedback and taking it in sincere view. You know, I understand this trail is a gateway to other points, but my first thought about it, when I thought about it, is it's a view of Interstate 295 and Route 1. You know, somebody brought up an excellent point about how it's a gateway to other trails, and that's a great point. I didn't think of that. You know, my first thought is I could go take a walk on Twin Brooks, or I could take a walk down looking at an interstate highway. I'd rather go to Twin Brooks. But, you know, some people brought some feedback in that I didn't think about, and that was something to think about. At this point, we don't really know construction cost or maintenance cost. You know, we've seen funding requests for less money than this with more written formalities. And I'd really like to see Maine DOT come back with something more formal in writing. You know, we can sit here and say it's only $12,000. But when we did the budget this spring, $12,000 would move the needle on a line item, because that's just how the budget's built. So, you know, the biggest thing is I believe in listening to all the citizens in this town and trying to balance out, you know, wants versus needs and desires of one versus the others. And it's not easy. And I'll be honest with you right now, the only thing I can support would be to table this at this point in time. And that's just there's lack of stuff in writing, and there's too many unknowns, and that's where I'm at.
What do you want anything? And I'll jump in after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with much of what Bill said. I think that we do need to do the engineering study to understand what we're looking at. I think that also includes access points. I know we have Powell Road. I know the Tuttle Road Bridge is possible. You know, I think that we need information, and certainly DOT and all these different groups need information to move forward. That's why we do engineering studies, right? And I think the $12,000 is a reasonable request. I'm a little irritated, and I'm putting this aside, but there has been reference to how the town of Cumberland has been hesitant, and there is just such a lack of coordination with all the different stakeholders. And as a project manager, the number one risk to a project is stakeholders who aren't aligned, right? So we have PACS, we have DOT, we have the Casco Bay Trail Alliance, and then we have all of these different municipalities. And I think it would have been more effective, and it would save a lot of people heartache if all of those groups could have come aligned and then came and presented us something in one voice, because I think that's a big problem here tonight. And that said, my annoyance is not guiding me on everything, because at the end of the day, we also do have a lot of data. Thank you, Steve, Mr. Moriarty, for mentioning the data from the comprehensive plan and the survey. We also have the flash vote survey. We have the 2022 survey that we did at the town council, and there is a lot, over 60% support for trail and pedestrian trail access and creation of trails, including spending money on that. That is not this particular project, but all we can do is make decisions based off of the information we have. And then I will also mention that I think I responded to more emails than I've ever responded to in my entire life in support of this particular project from our residents. So I think that the $12,000 is a reasonable step. I think that I'm in favor of it, probably because it seems like that's really what the folks in our town, for the most part, want to do. But I really think it is so critical for the next steps that get it together with the abutters, go and meet with the abutters. If they want buffering, we figure out buffering. If they want fences, we figure out fences. It feels like this is sort of being dumped on us, and we're catching all the arrows, which is fine. That's what we're elected to do. But I would appreciate better due diligence on the stakeholder management to make this project a success.
Good. Go ahead, Bob. I can wait. The only thing I could think of listening to this meeting tonight was the movie Groundhog. Because this is deja vu all over again. 3 years ago, we were approached by the Casco Bay Trail and said, hey, can we have a conversation about this? And at the time, one of the abutters was on the council. And she and I both voted we'll have a conversation. We want to be part of the group. And sure enough, Casco Bay Trail the very next week lied in the press. Came out and lied. And matter of fact, the next time they came to the group and go, yeah, we didn't tell the truth. So what I found interesting tonight was from all the pro-trail people that are here tonight, not one of you mentioned the abutters. Not one. Nobody from the Casco Bay Trail Alliance mentioned the abutters. So that's our biggest concern. Yet you skated right over it. Everybody that spoke in favor of this, and the Casco Bay Alliance has basically pushed the abutters aside and said, we're doing this whether you like it or not. And I was it was mentioned earlier, part of the group that was looking into a salt shed and maybe DOT, and we listened to our neighbors 4 or 5 or 6 times on good places to put that. But we listened to them. And you're right, I am not willing to throw 3 miles of my neighbors under the bus for this project. We've been promised by the Casco Bay Alliance of meetings with the abutters. They didn't follow through. It was empty words. We've talked to DOT. Oh yeah, we got to meet with the abutters. Empty words. Well, I can't vote in favor of a project for people who speak with a forked tongue. And I refuse to, I am not voting in favor of this. Folks, if we vote in favor of this tonight to do the $12,000, trust me, DOT and Casco Bay Trail Alliance are going to be going, oh, Cumberland's in favor of it. Look, this is great. And I agree with you, Tig. If we took a survey, 90% of our residents be in favor of this. But 90% that vote in favor of it don't have hundreds of people going through their backyards every day. You know, you and I talked. If this was on Middle Road, you wouldn't hear anybody from the people that are on Middle Road come in and object to this. But this is going through their backyards. Where do people have their private and family time? In their backyards. Not in the front yards, in the backyards. That's where you look, and that's where they build decks, and they have horseshoe pits, and do all that stuff, spend family time. And nobody, Casco Bay Trail or DOT, has addressed the impact that it's going to have for them. So to me, this is a very simple decision. You have had your chance and had your chance and had your chance to step up to the plate, and you didn't step up. Matter of fact, you hid. So I'm voting not to support the $12,000 because it's going to be used in a way that doesn't show what our vote really is, and I hope it gets turned down. Bob, you had something?
I did. I brought a check with me tonight because I wanted to defer the cost of the $12,000 to the Cumberland taxpayer. I was fully prepared to move this agenda item forward. I'm with Jeff. I think the appropriate measure tonight is to table it. I want to see a piece of paper from MDOT delineating what was spoken here tonight, and I'm on board because I think the study is worth it. I think that the conversations with the abutters are extraordinarily important. And that's what I want to see happen. And I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is to make sure that happens.
Denise?
I have two questions, sorry.
Of,
One is just a general question. I'm looking at Google Maps at Powell Road. It's on the opposite side of 295 from where this trail would be. Is there a different Powell Road that has access to this?
Yeah, if you look at the end of Greeley Road Greeley Road, that's the OG Powell Road, and then it goes taken away by.
when they built 295, Denise, Power Road ran from middle
That
over
little
to the
skinny
north side.
thing? Okay, good. And then additionally, this is a question for you, Dakota. You mentioned at one point that the funding bill is passed, but there's no timeline. The study itself would take between 12 and 18 months. I wrote it down. But what is the deadline for towns to be on board with this? Because I would prefer if we had some time to workshop or do a couple meetings about this and maybe defer this to a couple months from now, revisit and see where we're at. I would feel a lot more comfortable just with time to digest, gather more information, see what, meeting with the butters and seeing if somebody from DOT could show up and, I don't know, just do some outreach or something. And I know you said typically that doesn't happen until the design is done, but it's, again, we said it would happen and it didn't happen, and it feels like garbage to go through with something when you have, an entire road of people who were expecting us to set up this meeting and have this dialogue, and it never happened. So that's my question for you is there some buffer time where we can do some diligence of our own, stick this on an agenda a few months down the line if needed, and we're not going to be counted out well, let's use that on something else, Cumberland's out. So is there a deadline as far as that goes?
Yes. We asked that all 4 towns pass a resolution of support by the end of the month. At this point, given the conversation, I'm going to say we'll be flexible. We'll be as flexible as we can. We do need to get these funds obligated at some point here. So there would be maybe a case where we would obligate funds and begin design with towns who are ready to move forward. But if conversations continued here and then got to a point where Cumberland was ready, we could probably make something work at some point. Obviously, if it languishes too long, we'll have spent the design money, with the design that we'd be doing if the other towns are interested. But I do want to walk out of this room with some clarity. This is the first time, to my knowledge, unless the town manager can correct me, that I've actually been invited here to talk about this project. So Maine DOT takes trust really, really seriously. I'll come to any meeting I'm invited to, but I need an invite. So I'll leave my business card for anyone who wants it, and Matt certainly has it. I'd like to walk out of the meeting today with who's in charge of scheduling this meeting with folks. Is it me? Is it the town? I don't want to miss that. So
It will probably be Matt and I, and we'll schedule.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You got it?
I'm conflicted, guys. I'm seriously, I'm really conflicted. I'm still processing, so you guys can keep talking. But I want to mention one more thing that kind of bothered me earlier. The comment that the trail group is referred to as a lobby, but they're not. I will tell you that when I was running for council, I and others who were running were approached by the Trail Alliance specifically asking if we would send an email to the Trail Alliance group saying that we endorse this trail, we think it's a good idea, publicly say that to them, and in return we would be endorsed for the election. So there is absolutely a lobby going on. And whether you were aware of that or not, it happened. There was also conversations I had on the phone with a representative from the Trail Alliance talking about the NIMBYism in town. It's a little more complicated than we're making it out to be. There's a lot of politics involved. There's this idea that if you have a concern as a butter, you're automatically a NIMBY. And so I want to acknowledge that that is an undercurrent here, and it's gross, and I think we should get beyond that and just treat each other as humans and understand that if you have a concern, and especially about your safety, or like I have budget concerns about this, and I have maintenance concerns and safety concerns, doesn't mean I'm a NIMBY or anyone else is. You can have concerns without being labeled. So just putting that out there, and let's continue that forward, because I know we're gonna have other projects here where the NIMBYs and the YIMBYs come out and it's like a battle. So this is just one of those situations.
Robert,
I have a motion.
is your motion to table?
It is.
All right.
I move to table item 26-068.
Second.
Ooh, we're not supposed to do that.
What?
So if that's the worst thing you do in your life.
Sorry.
Is there any discussion, further discussion on tabling from the council?
I think the tabling.
Yeah, that's it.
I think the tabling should be contingent, right? So this motion being tabling is with the understanding that we are, again, following up with the DOT and abutters, right, to understand what this is. So if that's what the intention of the motion is.
Very good, Bill.
I also would like to, if we're doing that, have already a month and a date and an agenda where we're gonna bring this up again and do this all over again with having gathered some extra data or doing some sort of workshop or something. Like, I wanna make sure that we schedule this out so that, like Dakota said, we're not like languishing for months and end up forgetting about it, like soonish, if we could do that and fit that into the schedule.
Jeff?
Yeah, and I guess the main DOT, I mean, if they're gonna be coming back, I'd really like some answers on the questions that you got from me tonight, so, think we should get that before we have our next meeting.
All right, what is the consensus from the council on tabling it? Show of hands if you're in favor of tabling it.
Contingent on what we just talked about, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's a quick
Depending on
follow-up.
what we
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for point of clarity, before the council acts on the motion to table, or before the motion to table gets out there and you can't discuss it any further, Dakota's been awesome to work with. Like, I will say, since he's been involved with this, he's been more than willing to come. So I think that there's definitely a change there, and part of it was MDOT working on a bill that they wanted to get through the legislature, so I think that was an obstacle for them to come down. I'm not making excuses for anybody, but it's just, there's a lot of things there that are all in play. Secondly, looking at it, some of the pressure was just because they have their timeline, and PAC's putting this on and moving this forward has kind of expedited it more quickly, to the point that now all of a sudden, you know, as Dakota said, it was the end of the month when needed to have that done by. So that's kind of why it had to pop up more quickly. And then the third thing, I am more than happy to work with you, of course, and Dakota to try to get that scheduled. We can look at, you know, probably the August calendar for a workshop along those lines. But Dakota's, you know, our emails have gone back and forth just saying he's more than happy in MDOT to come down and have that conversation. So I think those are some of the game pieces that have changed in the conversation over the past, you know, 12 to 18 months. And there's also more of an openness now. But I think it's also because more of the project has taken more shape, or at least more of a direction in a positive manner. So I think funding has also come into play on that. That's kind of changed the complexion of the conversation too. So if that helps the council as far as making decisions and expediting, at least as far as planning for what we're doing for a workshop in over the next couple of meetings. So we'd look at that.
Dakota, I think I can speak for the council to say thank you. We've got more out of you than anything else in the last 2 years. But you were direct with your answers. You didn't beat around the bush. You're a gentleman, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
So, it's the will of the council? To table? Your motion to table?
Mr. Chair, I'll give you a motion to table this.
I thought we just had.
Okay.
Yeah, already got it from
all right.
Robert.
Okay, well, that's what I thought, and then you said motion to table, I'm sorry.
All
It's
those-
getting late.
All those in favor of tabling this? There you go.
Thank you.
To be continued.
Item 26-069, Town Council Committee Assignments.
You want me to read it, Mike?
Please.
I know someone's gonna do it, so it might as well be me that botches it. Okay.
Was that a softball to an older person? I appreciate that.
No, it's,
Councilor Thorson, if you'd prefer to save your language, you can also use to approve the council committee appointments as presented in the meeting materials. And you won't have to read the whole listing if you don't want to.
yeah, that's fine. I'm sure if people wanna know, they can like go to the website and look at it. So, I would like to mention the chairs at least, because that's exciting, right?
If we can move the conversations outside, thanks, guys.
All right, so I'll just mention that the, let's see, Counselor Mahalik will be chairing the nominating committee. Counselor Filson will be chairing the finance committee.
If you guys can just move the conversation outside, thank you very much.
Counselor Vale will be chairing the ordinance committee. Counselor Filson will be chairing the TIF committee. And those are the highlights. So I move to approve the town council committee assignments as presented in the meeting materials.
Second.
We'll go, anybody from the public wish to speak on this item?
Oops, sorry.
Sorry. Seeing none, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Public hearing.
Item 26-070, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a liquor license renewal for Cumberland House of Pizza. Mr. Manager, what do you got?
Mr. Chairman, we are happy from the staff side to recommend the council move forward with renewal of the Cumberland House of Pizza's liquor license renewal. And staff has nothing but the highest of regards for them, no complaints.
Any questions of the manager from the council? Put it up for the public. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, bring it back to the council. What is your, is there a motion?
Yes, I'll provide you a motion on item number 26-070. I move to approve the liquor license renewal for Cumberland House of Pizza.
Second.
Second by Denise. All those in favor? Item 26-071, to consider and act on authorizing the code enforcement officer to enter into a consent agreement with the property owners located at 29 Pond Shore Drive. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an item that 29 Pond Shore Drive was recently sold, and during the process of their transferring of ownership, they had a mortgage inspection survey performed on the property, and they found that there was a 4-foot encroachment on the required setback area. You notice we've had a couple of these over the past couple of years as the work gets a little bit more detailed, a little bit more accurate. They're finding occasionally that a house may have been built in an encroaching manner on there. So Mr. Longley has worked with the new owners as well as their attorneys and the town's attorney to come up with the language. So tonight they brought forward a consent agreement, and this is, in a sense, blessing this 4-foot encroachment, which has, based on Mr. Longley's approach, he's fully recommends this as well. It's a no harm, no foul type of event. However, it needs to be blessed by the town, so that's why we brought it forward this evening. So all the language has been reviewed by the town's attorney, and she's brought this forward as well and has checked all the boxes.
Right.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are these consent agreements a requirement based on like town ordinance regarding property lines? Is it like a state statute? Like, does the power lie with us? What I'm getting at is, I don't want to automate this too much, but if we have a bunch of these coming up as we have turnover on older lots and stuff, lot lines getting lost, and it's within, like 10 feet or less or something like that, or 15 feet or less, or some metric we determine is probably fine. Is there room, if we decided to do this in the future, to have those be kind of like auto-approved and not have to come to the council? Like, what is this what is this based on, basically, legally?
No, thank you for the question, Councilor Thorson. It's ultimately a title issue, and it's providing a clear title. So every time that a person finds that, say this house sold again next month, we wouldn't have to come back and get the council's blessing again. And unfortunately, because, the vehicle by which to bless this is a consent agreement that has to be approved by the municipal officials. So
Okay.
that's kind of the remedy that's there. But again, it's not commonplace, but it does happen. So
Okay.
you might see one every couple, 3 years,
Okay.
more or less.
I know we've been seeing more of them. I just wonder, I mean, if it's a non-starter, then that's fine. It's just, I imagine if you're trying to sell or buy your house and you just have to wait for this to go through a council process, it's kind of, I'd be kind of annoyed, but it is what it is.
We just missed it by a day on the last one, but they were okay
Right.
with the 2 week. And if you recall, 29 Pond Shore was a property that the town had come in under foreclosure for non-payment of taxes. We found the heirs, and the heirs paid it all off like a year and a half ago, and then they've done the house over, and it's back on the market and sold, and it's a lovely home now, so it's going to be a nice house.
Nice.
But this is the last obstacle in the way.
Any further questions from the council of Matt? This is a public meeting, public hearing. Anybody from the public want to be heard on this? Seeing none, I bring it back to the council for action.
Your motion if you want one.
Go ahead, Tit.
All right, I move to authorize the code enforcement officer to enter into a consent agreement with the property owners located at 29 Pond Shore Drive.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, 26-072, to consider and act on amendments to the Twin Brook recreational area policies and rules as recommended by the Recreation Community Education Advisory Board. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you'll notice in the council packet this evening, there are two updates in there, or one red line and one original in there, so it shows the changes. Recreation Director Pete Bingham came in and teed this up last meeting to bring that forward, but in order to have this ready for council action, we felt that you might want to have a couple weeks to take a look at that. So, but a lot of it's just bringing up to date language. This has been reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Commission or committee, and they've looked at that, and it's been brought forward, and they approved this as well. So this is why it's come to the council this evening.
Pete, I don't want you to think we're ignoring you. I know it's been a long night. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
That's pretty much what I told him as well, Mr. Chairman. I said, by the time you get around to it, he may just need to answer a question or two.
Pete mad at us. I didn't call
My
him.
legs are cramping up. I had to move. No, really, we didn't really omit anything from the original document. It just hadn't been amended since 2013, and the youth sports and the overall user activity at the park has evolved in that time. So this just kind of was making this a more accurate and up-to-date document. No real seismic changes to it other than a lot of things that we'd actually kind of tacitly adopted, but I felt the need to get this cauterized and get this document up to date. So that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you, Pete. Anybody questions of Pete while he's up there? No, thanks, Pete.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
It's a public hearing. Anybody from the public want to be heard on this? Seeing none, we'll come back to the council. Go ahead, Denise.
I know, I always got something to say. Deal with it. I think I would, at some point, like to revisit how dogs have to be on leash around here. They can't be on athletic fields, but they're allowed on the playground with the kids. I think at one point, I think we should maybe see how people feel about that and decide whether we want to have no dogs on the playground, if that's even a thing you can enforce, which it's hard to enforce anything about dogs
I'm
around
going to ask
here.
my dogs how they feel about that.
When you can follow laws with your dogs, you can have an opinion. How about that? But, no.
For you, Bob.
That's it.
Anything else, Denise? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Anybody from the council on this?
I just have a question. Why are no playing fields on Sundays until 12? Is that,
Used to be one.
yeah, just curious as why?
organized.
I think it's for pastorally quiet on a Sunday morning, although there is the changes that take place during the Cumberland Soccer Tournament, Just for Fun tournament that they play, but usually it's on an as requested basis if they want to go before noon on a Sunday. But I think it's kind of like the original approval was, want to have a kind of little peaceful Sunday morning, but then
It's like a religious holdover?
no, just more. Peace and quiet on a Sunday morning
Okay.
versus
Just
raising heck.
curious because we don't have any noise ordinances in
Yeah.
town, so I was just wondering.
Yeah,
how that
that's-
was connected.
There's also, and Pete can talk more this if I misspeak, but especially in the summer and into fall, it's used a lot by organized groups, and so this gives the people that are not part of those organized groups a chance to be on the fields. It also gives the fields a rest from constant activity for a little bit. If there's any sort of minor maintenance needs to get done or anything like that, that can be done in that morning and all. But a lot of it is that you've got from practically sun up to sundown, some organized, whether it's soccer or lacrosse or something else on those fields, that they're not available to everybody else that isn't involved in that, and this gives them
Makes sense.
some time.
Thank you.
So it's still open.
Yeah, and that was it was actually 1 p.m. on Sundays, and that was in the very original document. I think there was some blue laws to that at the time, and we've operated on that. And to Andrew's point, it really does help the facility because it limits an outside group approaching us wanting to do a 2-day full-on lacrosse or soccer festival or playoffs, and the park needs rest. But one of the things that we adjusted is there was a 3-step process to doing a Sunday activities, and really, if you needed, let's just say it's the last Saturday of rec soccer. We're up against the weather and everything else. If we didn't have that Sunday morning to pivot, or if I had to, technically I had to go to advisory board would approve it, and we'd send it to the council chair. Sometimes we don't have that time to make that decision. So we kind of use some of what the Maine Principals Association's adopted. They don't allow Sunday activities unless it's on kind of an emergency basis. Which actually helps us because historically, if we had to cancel the MPA State Cross Country Championship on Saturday, October 17th, our only option by their bylaws was to go on the 24th, and sometimes that just doesn't work. So now they can go on a Sunday if it's some sort of unforeseen circumstance, or during the high school basketball tournament during February vacation. Now they can play on a Sunday if there's an all-out blizzard Friday and Saturday. So just gives us a little more flexibility, more tools in our toolbox to try and get a sports season in, especially in the fall when we're losing daylight. We're always up against it. So this just kind of, the intention was to keep with the spirit of the rule, but just give us a little more flexibility.
I don't think you'll get any pushback from this group.
Great. It was really well thought out. This was probably version 6 or 7. Version 1 probably we rolled out last September, so we've been kind of picking at it. There was no real rush. Andrew and Dawn can attest. Dawn's on the advisory board as well. That we took our time on this, so I feel really good about it.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions?
No, I'm ready to give you a motion for
Go ahead, Jeff.
approval. On item number 26-072, I move to amend the Twin Brooks Recreation Area Policies and Rules as recommended by the Recreational Community Education Advisory Board.
Second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? And the final item is to set a public hearing date of July 27th to consider and act on a wharfing out permit for 77 Sanderson Road. It's public. It's just to set a date, but does anybody from the public want to be heard on this? None? Anything from the council on this?
No.
I mean, before, there's a blank page on the site plan, you know, how you're supposed to like draw your site and draw your elevations and it's just blank. But I know later on there's some more detailed images of where it is and what it would look like. I don't know if we need to have those parts filled out before we actually consider this or not, or if that it's okay to have.
Yeah, I think
what
they did
have.
that instead, because
Okay.
there's a higher level of detail than they could have got on, like,
Okay.
oftentimes those others would have been.
Detail is further down in
Yeah.
in
The hand scratchings on that.
application.
And at the public hearing, the engineers and the property representative will be here as well, just in case there are any additional questions. But it's pretty straightforward. It's been reviewed by the Coastal Waters Commission, and they've held meeting with the abutters, and everything seems to be uneventful.
Cool.
So it should be a high level. It shouldn't be a full room in 2 weeks.
If there's a motion from a brand-new counselor, he wants to make it, we'll certainly accept it.
All right. So I move to set a public hearing date of July 27 to consider an act on a wharfing out permit for 77 Sanderson Road.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? All right, under new business, Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
Really excited about having you on. This is great. So go ahead. Open the floor to you for any new business you have.
I think the only, again, I'd like to reiterate, I thought the process tonight on the rail trail was informative, and I'm glad that everybody could listen. I wasn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily think we'd come to the point where we would work to table the discussion. But I think all the points that came out during that discussion warranted that decision. And so I think it, so that was a good process. So I compliment the public and the council on getting that forward. Other than that, I look forward to, there's going to be many more issues to come through, I'm sure. The comprehensive plan, which I've spent the last 18 months on with Steve Moriarty and crew, and Tig and Bob, is I'm certainly going to provoke some questions and more follow-up, and looking forward to hearing what folks say about that. And since it is 10 o'clock at night, I'm stopping.
We look forward to working with you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
in the future. Andrew?
I've got nothing tonight.
Tig?
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I did, we had Kim Vine here, Chair of the School Board. I did, when I met with Leanne Candora, the former Chair of the School Board, after our last meeting, did float the idea of a school board liaison from the council, same way that we have as the JSC. Bob, you took my credit for that. That was something I brought to all of you, you wackadoodle. At our caucus, but by all means, if you want to be the person, you can. Although I would also be happy to do that. But I think it would warrant. I think we should talk about that. We have one for JSC. I think that if this is going to be an opportunity to rebuild trust, and certainly I think that no harm can come from that. So I would love to talk about that at some point. If anyone else wants to talk about it. That's it for me.
Robert?
Comprehensive plan is over. We talked about affordable housing and workforce housing. I was going to bring this up tonight, but I will wait till next meeting to request that we take it up again.
Denise?
I learned a lot tonight. You can see my unhinged scribblings of the notes I took from everything Dakota said, and I don't even know what this is anymore. I can't read it. But appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts and us talking this out without becoming crazy. And that's something that I really appreciate about all of us, is we can disagree and talk about these things and throw ideas off of each other, and we maintain professionalism and we like each other, and you guys are cool. You're cool too, Jeff.
Thank you.
And again, I want us to get to a place where we feel comfortable going forward with this trail, and that a big piece of that is making sure that, again, abutters are heard. You don't have to acquiesce to everyone's demands about everything, but you at least need to listen to them and give them an opportunity to share what concerns them and have that inform the design process, whether it's buffering, very large fences, whatever. So looking forward to continuing that process and getting to a point where we hopefully feel comfortable with that. And we also have an access point, because I agree that, I mean, if 68% of people in the comp plan survey wanted connections between areas of town, that's great. That's not what this is unless we have access. There's connection to nothing, and it's not connecting anything between any areas of town. So all of those surveys, I appreciate the spirit of them, but unless we have access to this trail, I consider them moot because it's not a Cumberland trail in that case. It's not anything we have access to as citizens. So again, looking forward to continuing with that and getting some answers and hopefully creating this municipal steering committee in the future perhaps and weighing in on the design and making sure that all of our concerns are addressed and every municipality and group that is involved feels okay with it because we're going to be the ones living with it and maintaining it and doing everything with it if it goes forward in the future. And it's our responsibility. Like, we are elected to do this, and part of it is being fiscally responsible, and $500,000 is a lot. So I just want to make sure that if we do go forward with the design study, we don't feel like we have this sunk cost fallacy going on where we feel obligated to continue in the future if it doesn't end up working with our budget and everything. So that's what I'm keeping in mind. If I do end up feeling comfortable and we vote this forward in the future, in no way at all am I feeling obligated about continuing. Perhaps it just means we lose $12,000 and move on, but the alternative is much more expensive and a much longer commitment, and we need to weigh that as well. I appreciate Kim coming and speaking to us. I am not on Facebook. I haven't been for many months, and it has done wonders for my mental health. And I like people and my neighbors better because of it. But part of that also means that I am left out of like the crazy drama that happens in our community. And if that involves town councilors, please cease immediately because not cool. And that's about it. Thanks.
Jeff?
All right. So I got a couple things. $20 for the food pantry. Mr. Manager, I wondered if we could appropriate some money to buy Denise a 5-subject notebook so that she could maybe have more organized
Like,
workspace.
I have undiagnosed ADHD, I'll tell you right now. Nothing's gonna help me.
Okay, all right.
I got it on paper and that helped me remember it. So
Okay.
now I can just shred this and
Okay,
get it out of my life.
all right.
It's fine.
I was just trying to
appreciate
help
it.
you out, Denise.
I appreciate it, thank you.
On a more serious note, I had a conversation with a citizen over the weekend that he brought up the radio tower approval process, and he felt like he had no notification of it. And, you know, he's like, you know, maybe you ought to go old school and have some sandwich boards. And I thought about it over the weekend, and I said, you know, where we have the things about Christmas trees and, you know, bulky waste and all that, it's intersections of the town. It's like, you know, I consider this like a major agenda item, you know, and like, could we just make a sign that says like important council agenda item, you know, and when we have, you know, items like the rail trail where we know it's gonna be a big one, we put those up and just try to steer people to go look at stuff electronically. I know we're going to the digital age, but it's like there's stuff I want to check digitally every day, and I can't get to all of it. So it was just an idea I came up with. We can talk more about it in the future, but I thought he had a valid point, so I wanted to share that with the council. Route 100, I know from my citizens up in West Cumberland, it's not quite done yet, but the good news is I hear rumor that they're going to pave next week, so that'll be really good. And then a couple things that we started talking about last fiscal year that, you know, we just kind of ran out of time, but I'd like to get it on the plan for this year is road acceptance and standards and public water for up in Bruce Hill and the valley. You know, I know we can't probably solve all the stuff right off, but maybe if we can work towards it, that's something I'd like to discuss in a future meeting. So that's all I got.
Nothing other than thank you to my fellow council members for your confidence. We spoke privately as a group about me taking over or any of us taking over and going, you know, I think one question was, why you? And, you know, I was thinking back to the school board chair coming in here tonight. I'm not going to backwalk anything I've said in the past. You guys know me well enough. I'm pretty blunt when it comes to something. But that being said, you won't find anybody that wants a better relationship with the school board than I do. And we've got some important stuff to do. We're talking about collaboration with different towns on how we do business, and I think that's an important subject, and I'm going to carry that forward. I haven't attended a lot of the school board meetings, as was brought up tonight, and she's 100% right. And what she doesn't know was there's a past history with a couple previous school board members, including 2 previous chairs that went after me. Both of them I'd had no idea who they were. One went after me on a social media post, and one went after me. I don't even know why, to the point that Bob had to come and tell me, hey, by the way, do you know so-and-so? No. Well, she thinks there was something going on. I don't want to go into depth about why, but there was a reason that I hesitated going in the last couple of years. I'm hoping that changes with Kim and the new board, and I certainly extend the olive branch to her. So that's all I've got. If anybody else got something here? Go ahead, Robert.
Move to adjourn.
Congratulations, Mike. Congratulations, Denise.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you both.
And congratulations to Bailey.
And congratulations to Bailey.
Congratulations to you.
Is there a
for
motion to
not having to chair
there's a
anymore.
motion, second?
Second.
All those in favor? Adjourn. Thanks, guys.
Mhm.